A pleasant day to all of you, ladies and gentlemen. I am Annalyn Lopez from Department of Agriculture. In this brief presentation, I will discuss the Sanitary and Phytosanitary chapter of the Philippines EFTA States Free Trade Agreement. This presentation is titled Facilitating Trade Through Agreed Disciplines on SPS Measures. Before diving into the SPS chapter, let us first define SPS measures. The WTO agreement on the application of SPS measures is the main reference document of all free trade agreements with SPS chapter or provisions. Under this agreement, SPS measure is defined as any measure that is applied for four purposes. 1. To protect animal and plant life or health from entry, establishment, or spread of pests, disease-carrying or disease-causing organisms. 2. To protect human or animal life or health from food-borne risks arising from additives, contaminants, toxins, or disease-causing organisms in foods, beverages, or feedstuff. 3. To protect human life or health from diseases carried by animals, plants, or products thereof. And 4. To protect a member's territory or a country's territory from other damage arising from the entry, establishment, or spread of pests. In other words, SPS measures are those measures that are adopted to minimize safety and health risks associated with the movement of commodities across international borders. As more and more agricultural and fishery commodities can be easily traded globally, there are risks of spreading plant pests, animal and zoonotic diseases, and food safety hazards as well. Therefore, SPS measures are critical in ensuring safety and protection while facilitating global trade. It is also important to mention that SPS measures are applied in the territory of exporting and importing countries in almost all stages of the supply chain. So in terms of scope, SPS measures refer to all laws, decrees, regulations, requirements, and procedures relevant to the protection and promotion of human health, food and feed safety, animal health, and plant health, which include end product criteria, processes and production methods, testing and inspection procedures, certification and approval procedures, quarantine treatments including transport requirements, provisions on relevant statistical methods, sampling procedures, methods of risk assessment, and packaging and labeling requirements related to food safety. As I mentioned before, SPS measures are applied in the territory of the exporting and importing countries. However, the subject of discipline under various trade agreements is more on the SPS measures applied by countries on imported commodities or on measures that affect the exports of other countries. The basic objective is to minimize the negative impact of SPS measures on international trade. Since the free trade agreement between the Philippines and EFTA states aims to facilitate trade and create more markets, the SPS chapter under this FTA intends to discipline the application of SPS measures so that the benefits of trade can be maximized. Specifically, the Philippines EFTA SPS chapter provides some details to practically implement the WTO SPS agreement. It has specific provisions on the conduct of inspection, import checks, and audit by the importing party, as well as provisions on certification requirements, movement of products in the territory of the importing party, among others. It also aims to strengthen cooperation on SPS matters to ensure facilitation of trade and access to Philippine and EFTA states markets. It intends to increase transparency by facilitating information exchange on SPS measures and issues, as well as provide a practical mechanism to effectively solve concerns regarding measures that are considered to negatively impact on the trade between and among parties involved in the FTA. The SPS chapter is actually more relevant to the government authorities which develop, adopt, and apply SPS measures. I listed a summary of the disciplines on the application of SPS measures as agreed by the Philippines and EFTA states. So in this slide and the next, we will elaborate on the agreed disciplines. First is on inspections, certification system, and audits. Both parties agreed that this shall be carried out based on international standards developed by 3 standard-setting organizations. These are World Organization for Animal Health, International Plant Protection Convention, and Codex Alimentarius Commission. If an importing party requires an audit of the system of the exporting party for purposes of inspection and certification of food and agri-fishery commodities for export, the agreement is that this shall be done on a system-wide basis for greater efficiency. However, this obligation does not diminish the right of importing party to conduct inspection of individual exporting establishments. Prior to audit or inspection, involved parties will have to agree on the anticipated costs of such activity. And for transparency purposes, the results of inspection and audit shall be documented in an assessment report which shall be available to the exporting party within 60 days following the audit or inspection. The exporting party has 45 days to comment on the report, and the importing party has the obligation to include the comments in the final assessment report. Second, on certificates. FTA parties agreed to cooperate to minimize the number of SPS certificates as far as possible. Any requirement for official certificates should be harmonized with international standards. When a competent authority of the exporting party issued SPS certificates in English, these shall be accepted by the importing party without any further requirements or charges. There is also an obligation for any party to notify other parties and explain the reason if it will introduce or modify a certificate. Third, on cooperation. FTA parties agreed to strengthen cooperation to improve mutual understanding of each other's SPS regulatory systems to facilitate market access. Such cooperation includes collaboration between scientific institutions on risk analysis and provision of scientific advice. Parties also agreed to some transparency obligations, such as publication of SPS regulations, provision of supplementary information regarding import requirements in English, and notification of new measures, including explanation of scientific basis. Parties shall also notify other parties of any substantial change with respect to their competent authorities and contact points. Next, on the movement of products. The importing party has the obligation to ensure that goods fully compliant with relevant SPS requirements can freely move within its territory once placed on the market. Fifth, on import checks. As agreed, import control shall be carried out in accordance with international standards, and it shall be based on the risk associated with such goods. Import checks shall be non-discriminatory and not restrictive to trade. These shall be carried out expeditiously to avoid any deterioration of perishable goods. Now, goods that are subject to random and routine checks shall not be detained at the border while awaiting the results of laboratory analysis. There should also be information exchange about the frequency of import checks or any changes in the frequency. FTA parties are also obliged to ensure that adequate procedures exist to allow importers to apply for supplementary expert opinion at an accredited laboratory as regards sampling and analysis of the consignments, or that mechanisms exist to appeal decisions that reject consignments at a port of entry. Parties also agreed that there should be prompt notification, both to the importer and exporting party, in cases where imported goods are detained at a port of entry due to an alleged SPS non-compliance. The notification shall include the factual basis and scientific justification of such action. And finally, the chapter provides a mechanism for consultations to resolve any SPS-related trade concern. Such consultation shall take place within 30 days from the receipt of the request, except for concerns involving perishable goods, in which case the consultation shall be initiated as soon as possible. In conclusion, the chapter on SPS aids trade facilitation between the Philippines and EFTA states as envisioned in the Free Trade Agreement. It provides disciplines to ensure that the development and application of SPS measures, which may have impact on the trade among parties, will not be more trade restrictive than required in ensuring health and safety protection. The attainment of this objective is through strengthening cooperation on SPS-related trade issues and increasing transparency in carrying out measures and procedures to check SPS compliance. This is the end of my presentation. Thank you very much for your kind attention.